We're now going to talk about a key suppressing operator that's found in RxJava's single class. Suppressing operators in this context create a single that ignores some or all of its payload, and we'll be focusing on the ignoreElement suppressing operator. The ignoreElement operator returns a completable that ignores the success value of this single and simply signals onComplete instead. As you can see, this method takes no parameters and returns a completable, which is a type that is very simple. It simply says it's done, and it gives back an onComplete method callback no matter what happens. This data suppressing operator simply ignores its payload. Here's a simple example we'll look at further when we get into the case study at the end of this lesson. As you can see, we use the single from callable factor method operator to take an unreduced big fraction and reduce it. Then we go ahead and use the doOnSuccess operator to log that reduced big fraction. We then use the map transforming operator in order to convert that reduced big fraction, which is a so-called improper fraction, into a mixed fraction using toMixString. We then go ahead and log that using doOnSuccess. And finally, we return a completable by invoking ignoreElement at the end of this single chain. And this value that's returned from ignoreElement is used to synchronize with the async task barrier that we've talked about earlier. If you recall in our earlier discussion, async task barrier is used to ensure that an asynchronous computation that's running in a background thread or threads doesn't complete prematurely. It'll simply wait until that operation is finished, and then that'll be used to indicate that you can continue on when all the other asynchronous operations that the async task barrier is waiting on have finished as well. As we can see here, ignoreElement returns a completable value, and completable simply represents a deferred computation that doesn't have any value come back, but it only indicates completion or exceptions. Project Reactor, interestingly enough, doesn't have a direct equivalent to ignoreElement. However, the mono-then operator that's defined in Project Reactor can be used in a very similar way. So that completes part one of our discussion of suppressing operators in the single class. Later, we'll see that there's some other operators that are important as well, but that will come up in upcoming lessons.